The Galactic Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries. They had conquered countless worlds, crushed rebellions, and wiped out entire species that dared to resist. Their fleets were massive, their warriors feared across the galaxy. No one had ever stood against them and survived. Then they met humanity. The distress signal came from the heart of the Dominion, a desperate plea sent across all known frequencies. It repeated the same words over and over again. "We surrender. We seek peace. Please, stop." On board the UHS Valkyrie, Admiral Ryan Drake listened to the message in silence. His officers stood around him, waiting for his response. The bridge was quiet, only the hum of machinery and the soft beeping of consoles filling the air. Captain Sarah Holt, his second in command, finally spoke. "This has to be a mistake. The Dominion never surrenders." Drake leaned forward, staring at the holographic display of the Dominion's homeworld. "It's no mistake," he said. "They're begging." A murmur spread through the bridge crew. They had all fought in the war. They had seen Dominion warships burn, their soldiers fall. But never, not once, had the Dominion shown weakness. Lieutenant Carter, the communications officer, looked up from his console. "Admiral, should I send a response?" Drake didn't answer immediately. His mind went back to the beginning of the war, 5 years ago. The Dominion had struck first. They had seen humanity as nothing more than another weak species to be enslaved. Their fleets arrived in human space with overwhelming force, believing Earth would fall within days. But humanity was not weak. The first battles were brutal. The Dominion's forces were larger, more advanced, and more experienced. They destroyed human colonies, bombarded cities, and executed prisoners. They thought fear would break humanity. Instead, it made them angry. Humanity fought back with everything they had. They adapted, learned, and countered every tactic the Dominion used. Where the Dominion relied on overwhelming numbers, humans used strategy and precision. Where the Dominion followed rigid battle formations, humans were unpredictable. And then there were the ground battles. The Dominion had expected easy victories. After all, most species surrendered when Dominion shock troopers landed. But human soldiers were different. They fought like demons, using guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and relentless assaults. Entire Dominion legions vanished into jungles, mountains, and ruined cities, never to be seen again. The war turned. The hunters became the hunted. Now, 5 years later, the Dominion was on its knees. Their once mighty fleets were shattered. Their armies were broken. And their leaders, once proud and ruthless, were sending out desperate calls for peace. Drake exhaled slowly. "No response," he finally said. "Not yet." Holt frowned. "Why not? If they're surrendering, shouldn't we accept?" Drake looked at her. "Do you believe them?" Holt hesitated. "I don't know." Drake turned to Carter. "Play the message again." The words repeated, the voice filled with something no Dominion officer had ever shown before. "Fear. We surrender. We seek peace. Please, stop." Drake listened carefully. "Something's wrong," he muttered. Lieutenant Jacobs, the tactical officer, leaned forward. "Sir, they're not just surrendering," Drake said. "They're terrified." Jacobs frowned. "Terrified of us?" Drake nodded. The Dominion never begged for peace when they lost to other species. They wiped them out instead. He pointed at the hologram of the Dominion's homeworld. "But now, they sound desperate, like they're afraid we won't stop even if they surrender." The bridge fell silent again. Holt shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe they're right to be afraid," she said quietly. Drake didn't answer. Instead, he turned back to Carter. "Send a scout team to their homeworld. I want eyes on the ground before we do anything." Carter nodded. "Yes, sir." Drake stared at the hologram. He had spent years fighting the Dominion. But now he wondered, was the war really over? Or was something even worse about to begin? The UHS Valkyrie moved through space, its sleek black hull cutting through the void like a predator stalking its prey. Behind it, a fleet of human warships followed, their weapons primed, their crews ready for battle. Even though the Dominion had surrendered, no one in the fleet was willing to let their guard down. Admiral Ryan Drake stood on the bridge, arms crossed, watching the massive planet on the main display. The Dominion homeworld. Once, it had been the beating heart of a ruthless empire. Now it looked abandoned, its orbit filled with wreckage, burnt-out warships, shattered stations, and drifting debris. Captain Sarah Holt let out a low whistle. I expected a strong defense, Admiral. But this is a graveyard. Drake didn't respond immediately. He was thinking the same thing. There were no active defense stations, no fighter patrols, nothing. If this was a trap, it was a strange one. Lieutenant Carter turned from his console. Sir, we've got a report from the scout team. They've landed on the surface. Drake nodded. Put them through. The main display flickered, and the helmeted face of Commander Alex Reyes appeared. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. Admiral, we've secured a landing zone. No resistance so far. The place is empty. Drake frowned. Empty. What do you mean? Reyes turned the camera, showing the ruins of a massive city. Skyscrapers stood in eerie silence, their lights flickering weakly. Roads were cracked and covered in debris. Vehicles had been left abandoned, some with their doors open as if their occupants had fled in a hurry. There's no one here, Reyes continued. No civilians, no soldiers, nothing. It's like they all vanished. A chill ran through the bridge crew. Any signs of battle? Holt asked. Negative, Reyes replied. No gunfire damage, no bodies, no blood. Just emptiness. Drake exchanged a look with Holt. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. They were losing, but they still had billions of people on this world. Where the hell did they go? Reyes hesitated. Sir, there's something else. Drake tensed. Report. The screen shifted as Reyes moved through a crumbling building. The walls were covered in deep claw marks, not from weapons, but from something alive. Reyes' voice dropped. I don't think they ran away, Admiral. I think something took them. The bridge fell into silence. For the first time since the war began, Drake felt something unfamiliar. Not victory, not relief. A deep, unsettling sense of fear. The ruins stretched for miles, a dead city under an alien sky. The Dominion's capital had once been the heart of their empire, filled with towering structures of black steel and glowing spires that touched the clouds. Now it was silent. Streets lay empty, vehicles abandoned in the middle of the roads, buildings hollow and lifeless. Commander Alex Reyes moved carefully, his squad of human Marines spreading out through the deserted streets. Their boots crunched against dust and debris as they scanned their surroundings. The deeper they went, the worse it became. Still no signs of bodies, Sergeant Kane muttered, his voice crackling through the comms. Where the hell did they all go? Reyes didn't have an answer. He checked his motion tracker. Nothing. No movement, no life signs. It was as if the entire population had simply vanished. Admiral, we're moving deeper into the city, Reyes reported. No hostiles, no civilians, just ruins. It's like a ghost town. On the UHS Valkyrie, Admiral Ryan Drake listened in silence. The situation didn't make sense. The Dominion had been losing, but even in their final moments, there should have been some resistance, a desperate last stand. But there was nothing. This isn't right, Captain Sarah Holt said beside him. They ruled the galaxy for centuries. They wouldn't just disappear. Drake exhaled slowly. Keep watching. Something happened here. Back on the surface, Reyes and his team pressed forward, their weapons raised, nerves on edge. They entered what looked like a military command center, massive, reinforced, built to withstand orbital bombardments. The doors were open, the defenses disabled. Inside, holographic displays flickered weakly, showing old Dominion battle plans. Reyes moved toward the central console and activated the system. The screen burst to life, playing a recorded message. A Dominion officer appeared, his face twisted in terror, his eyes wild. His uniform was torn, his breathing heavy. He spoke in a frantic voice, the translator struggling to keep up. We tried to stop them. They do not stop. They do not sleep. They do not fear. Reyes and his team exchanged uneasy glances. We thought we could fight back. We were wrong. The officer gasped, looking over his shoulder as if something was behind him. His hands were shaking. They are not human. They are worse. They hunt us for sport. Reyes stiffened. Do not trust the offer of peace. Do not. The screen went black. Silence filled the command center. What the hell was that? Kane whispered. Before Reyes could answer, his motion tracker beeped. A single blip. Something was moving. He raised his weapon. We have movement. The Marines spread out, their weapons aimed down the dark corridors. The air was thick, the silence suffocating. Then they heard it. A scraping sound. Slow. Methodical. Something was moving in the shadows, just out of sight. Reyes activated his helmet's night vision. At first, he saw nothing. Then, two glowing red eyes stared back at him. Contact. Reyes shouted. The thing moved fast, too fast. A blur of motion, a low guttural growl. Gunfire erupted, bright flashes cutting through the darkness. The creature was humanoid but wrong. Its movements unnatural, its body enhanced. It dodged bullets, closing the distance in seconds. A Marine screamed as claws tore through his armor, lifting him off the ground. Blood sprayed across the walls. The team fired again, unloading everything they had. The creature stumbled but didn't fall. More eyes appeared in the darkness. More of them. Fall back. Reyes shouted, dragging a wounded Marine toward the exit. His heart pounded as the things rushed forward, climbing walls, leaping across the ceiling. The Marines barely made it outside, sealing the massive doors behind them. The metal shook as the creatures slammed against it, snarling. Reyes gasped for breath. His mind raced. These weren't Dominion soldiers. They weren't aliens. They were human, or at least they used to be. Admiral, Reyes panted into his comm. We have a problem. A big one. Drake's voice came through, calm but sharp. Report. Reyes swallowed hard. Sir, there are humans here. Enhanced, faster, stronger. And they're hunting. Silence. Then Drake spoke, his voice low. They never stopped fighting, did they? Reyes looked back at the sealed doors, hearing the things still clawing to get out. No, sir, he said. They didn't. The silence on the UHS Valkyrie bridge was heavy. The crew had just heard Reyes' report, and no one spoke. The idea that humans, enhanced, feral, and hunting, were still on the Dominion homeworld sent a chill through them all. Admiral Ryan Drake's expression was unreadable, but his mind was racing. You're sure? He asked, his voice calm but firm. On the surface, Reyes and his team were taking cover near the entrance of the abandoned command center. The doors behind them shook as the things inside pounded against the metal, trying to break free. Reyes' breathing was uneven, but his answer was steady. Positive, sir. They move like us, fight like us, but they're not us anymore. Captain Sarah Holt glanced at Drake. Black Ops, she asked quietly. Drake's jaw tightened. He had heard rumors, stories about human strike teams that had gone dark during the war. Groups of elite soldiers sent deep behind enemy lines, missions so classified that not even the highest-ranking officers knew all the details. They were trained to win at any cost. Some had never returned. Some had never reported back. And now, it seemed, some had never stopped fighting. Drake turned to Lieutenant Carter. Pull every classified file we have on missing units. I want to know who they were, what their orders were, and why the hell they're still here." Carter nodded and got to work. Drake switched his comm back to Reyes. "Get back to the extraction point. Do not engage unless necessary." "Understood," Reyes replied. But before he could move, the pounding on the doors stopped. The team froze. A new sound filled the air. Whispers. Low, distorted, like voices speaking from somewhere deep underground. It wasn't Dominion. It was human. "Reyes," Kane whispered. "Tell me you hear that." Reyes heard it. The voices were speaking in broken, fragmented English. "They left us. The war never ended. We are the hunt now." Then the whispering stopped. A new sound replaced it. A single, slow knock. The team backed away. Raya's hands were slick with sweat inside his gloves. He didn't know what was worse, the violence from earlier or this. Then his motion tracker beeped. He checked it. Something was behind them. Ray spun around, but nothing was there, just empty streets. The ruined buildings stood silent, their broken windows like empty eye sockets watching them. A shadow moved. Contact. Something dropped from above. A Marine screamed as a figure landed on him, its hands clawed, its eyes burning red. It wasn't alien, it was human. Or it used to be. Its body was enhanced, muscles unnatural, bones reinforced, reflexes beyond anything normal. The Marine barely had time to struggle before the thing snapped his neck like a twig. The rest of the squad opened fire. Bullets tore through the figure, sending it stumbling back. But it didn't go down. It smiled. A slow, twisted grin spread across its face, as if amused by the pain. Then, with inhuman speed, it lunged forward. More of them came from the shadows. The squad ran. Reyes barely dodged as another figure leaped at him from a rooftop, landing with a sickening thud where he had just stood. They were everywhere now, emerging from alleyways, from doorways, from the ruins. "They're hurting us," Kane shouted. Reyes knew it was true. This wasn't a random attack. The things were pushing them somewhere. The squad turned a corner and stopped. A massive structure loomed ahead. It was a Dominion facility, but it looked different from the others. The doors were reinforced, the insignias scratched off. It wasn't Dominion anymore. The doors opened. Inside, the darkness waited. A voice echoed from within. "Come home, soldiers." Reyes felt his blood run cold. These weren't just abandoned operatives. They had built something here. Not a base. A nest. The squad had no choice. Behind them, the enhanced figures were closing in. Reyes tightened his grip on his weapon. "Admiral," he said through the comm, his voice deadly calm. "We have a bigger problem than we thought." Drake's voice came through. "Report." Reyes stared into the black doorway of the facility. "We're not dealing with survivors, sir," he said. "We're dealing with something worse." The doors to the facility stood open like the jaws of a beast, waiting to swallow them whole. The whispers had stopped. The only sound now was the pounding of their own hearts. Commander Reyes wiped the sweat from his brow. His squad was cornered. Behind them, the enhanced figures, twisted remnants of humanity, stood motionless, watching. They could attack at any moment, but they didn't. They were waiting. The voice from inside the facility had called them home. Reyes' grip tightened on his rifle. He didn't like this. Not one bit. "Admiral," he said through the comm, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We're entering the facility. No other choice." On the UHS Valkyrie, Admiral Ryan Drake and the bridge crew watched through helmet feeds. The mission had taken a sharp turn into the unknown. Drake's gut told him one thing. This wasn't just a Dominion planet anymore. "Move carefully," he ordered. "And Reyes, if something doesn't feel right, get out." "Understood," Reyes muttered. With a quick signal, he led his team inside. Inside the nest, the interior was dark, cold. The walls were lined with strange machinery, not Dominion tech, not human. Something else. The air smelled of metal, oil, and something rotting. Dim red lights flickered to life as they moved deeper. The floor was smooth steel, yet scuffed, as if things had been dragged through here. Sergeant Kane muttered, "I don't like this, man. Feels like a damn tomb." Reyes agreed. Then they heard it. A heartbeat. Loud, rhythmic, pulsing through the walls, through the floor. "Biosigns," said Corporal Vickers, checking his scanner. "Strong ones, deep inside." Reyes glanced at Kane. "We keep moving." The deeper they went, the worse it became. They passed rooms filled with equipment they didn't recognize. Tanks of strange liquid lined the walls. Some shattered, their contents spilled onto the floor. Others still held bodies, human bodies, floating in stasis, their eyes closed. Kane swallowed hard. What the hell is this place? Reyes had no answer. Then something moved. A shadow flickered in the dim red glow. Reyes snapped his rifle up, the squad following his lead. Silence. Then a voice. "You came back." It was human, but wrong. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed from the corridor ahead. A figure stepped into view. Tall, enhanced, eyes glowing faint red. But unlike the others they had encountered, this one wasn't feral. It wasn't mindless. It was aware. The squad aimed their weapons, but the figure didn't move to attack. Instead, it smiled. "Stand down," Reyes ordered, but he didn't lower his rifle. "Identify yourself." The figure tilted its head slightly, almost amused. "You don't remember me, do you?" Reyes frowned. "Should I?" The figure stepped closer. "Project Revenant. The first experiments. We were the best of you, better than human." Reyes' stomach twisted. He had heard whispers of Project Revenant, a classified operation meant to create the ultimate soldiers, warriors who could survive behind enemy lines for years, never needing backup, never needing extraction. But the project was shut down, or so they thought. The figure's smile widened. "They abandoned us. They told us to win, to keep fighting. And we did. We adapted. We evolved." His voice lowered, turning cold. "And now you've come to finish us off." Reyes didn't move. His squad was tense, fingers on triggers. "We came because the Dominion sent a distress signal," Reyes said carefully. "They surrendered. We thought they were afraid of us." The figure chuckled. "They were." His red eyes gleamed. "But not because of your fleet. Because of us." The realization hit Reyes like a punch to the gut. The Dominion hadn't been fleeing humanity. They had been running from something else. From them. The enhanced soldier spread his arms. "This war isn't over, Reyes. Not for us. Not for you." Behind him, more figures appeared. Watching. Waiting. "Join us," the figure said softly. "Or run." The word sent a chill down Reyes' spine. Because deep down, he knew there was nowhere left to run. Reyes' squad stood frozen, surrounded by figures that were once human, but no longer. These weren't just abandoned soldiers. They were something else now. The lead enhanced soldier, the one who spoke, the one who remembered, tilted his head, studying Reyes like a predator sizing up prey. "You don't get it yet, do you?" he said, his red eyes gleaming in the dim light. "The Dominion thought they could control us, just like the humans who made us did, just like you do now." Reyes tightened his grip on his rifle. "We don't control you. We didn't even know you were still alive." The enhanced soldier chuckled. "Not just alive. Thriving." He gestured to the facility around them. "This isn't a tomb, Reyes. It's a forge. A place where we became more." Kane muttered under his breath. "More like monsters." The enhanced soldier's smile faded. "You think we're monsters? After what they did to us?" His voice was calm, but his fists clenched at his sides. "They left us here. No extraction. No retreat. No mercy. His eyes burned brighter. And so, we became what we needed to be. Raya's mind raced. This wasn't just a group of abandoned operatives. This was a new faction, one that had evolved past both humanity and the Dominion. And they had no allegiance to either. "You're not prisoners anymore," Rice said carefully. "You don't have to fight." The enhanced soldier's expression darkened. "That's where you're wrong." He turned slightly, looking at the shadows behind him. More figures stepped forward, dozens, maybe more. Their bodies were different, enhanced in ways that should have been impossible. Some were sleeker, built for speed and agility. Others were heavily reinforced, like living tanks. Raya's squad had fought in dozens of battles. But this wasn't a battle. This was an execution waiting to happen. Drake's voice came through the comm. "Reyes, what's your status?" Reyes didn't look away from the enhanced soldier. "Sir, we've got a problem." The enhanced soldier's smile returned. "You don't need to call for help, Reyes. We're offering you something better." Reyes exhaled slowly. "And what's that?" "A choice." The room fell into silence. "You can leave. Go back to your fleet. Pretend you never saw us," the enhanced soldier said. "Or," his grin widened, "you can evolve." Reyes' squad tensed. "You're asking us to join you?" Reyes asked. The enhanced soldier nodded. "Your bodies are weak. We can fix that. We can make you faster, stronger, better." His voice dropped lower. "You wouldn't just survive, Reyes. You'd become something more. Like us." Reyes' stomach twisted. He wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that these people believed they were right, or the fact that they might be. "You don't understand what's coming," the enhanced soldier continued. "The Dominion was afraid of us, yes, but they weren't the only ones watching." Reyes frowned. "What do you mean?" The soldier's expression turned serious. "We weren't the first experiment, and we won't be the last." Something about the way he said it sent a cold chill through Reyes' veins. Before he could respond, Vickers, his squad's tech specialist, spoke up, panic in his voice. "Sir, we just picked up something on long-range sensors." Reyes turned. "What?" Vickers swallowed. "Something big is approaching the planet. Multiple signatures. They're not Dominion. And they're definitely not ours." For the first time, Reyes saw something in the enhanced soldier's expression that wasn't confidence. It was anticipation. "Right on schedule," he murmured. Reyes' blood ran cold. "Who's coming?" The enhanced soldier's smile returned, slow and knowing. "You'll see soon enough." The air inside the facility felt heavy, too still, too quiet. The enhanced soldier's red eyes gleamed as he watched Reyes and his team process the information. Something was coming. Something worse. Reyes' instincts screamed at him. They were running out of time. "Admiral," Reyes said through the comm, his voice tense. "We have incoming hostiles. Unknown class. We need immediate extraction." On the UH Valkyrie, Admiral Drake turned to his crew. "Get our fleet ready. Full combat alert. I want eyes on whatever is heading this way." Lieutenant Carter's hands flew over the console, confirming sensor readings now. "Sir, these ships aren't Dominion. They aren't human either." She hesitated. "They're massive, and spreading out in a formation we've never seen before." Drake's expression hardened. "Show me." A holographic display appeared, revealing an eerie sight, a fleet of massive, unknown ships sliding into real space. Their design was unfamiliar, organic and machine, fused together in a way that made no sense. Reyes heard the report through the comm and felt a chill crawl up his spine. He turned back to the enhanced soldier. "What the hell are they?" The soldier smiled. "Predators." Reyes clenched his fists. "If you know what they are, then start talking." The enhanced soldier's gaze didn't waver. "We were the first experiment. But we weren't the only one." His words hit Reyes like a punch. The Dominion hadn't been trying to just defeat humanity. They had been preparing for something. These things, the enhanced soldier continued, gesturing to the approaching fleet, were their contingency plan, a species engineered for war, for hunting, designed to wipe out anything that got in their way. His grin widened, including us. Reyes swore under his breath. "You're telling me the Dominion created something even worse than you?" The soldier chuckled. "They didn't create them. They found them. And when they realized they couldn't control them, they tried to make us strong enough to fight back." His expression darkened. "But they abandoned us, left us here to rot. So we made ourselves stronger, because we knew this day would come." Kane's voice came through the squad's comms. "Commander, we got movement. Lots of it." Reyes turned to see the enhanced soldiers stepping back into the shadows. "You better run, Reyes," the lead enhanced soldier said. "Because if you stay, you'll have two choices." His red eyes burned. "Join the hunt, or become prey." Then, without another word, he disappeared into the darkness. The ground trembled. Outside, the sky darkened as massive shapes descended from orbit. Strange, twisted war machines began landing across the ruined city, black spires unfolding like monstrous limbs. A deep, guttural sound filled the air. Not a scream, not a roar. Something worse. Something hungry. "Move," Reyes shouted. "Get to the extraction point." His squad broke into a sprint, weaving through the ruined streets as the first of the creatures emerged. Tall, lithe, covered in biomechanical armor. Their movements were wrong. Too smooth, too fast, too alien. Their black eyes reflected no light, no emotion. And then they charged. Reyes and his team opened fire. Bullets tore into the creatures, but they didn't stop. They adapted. Flesh closed around wounds, bones shifted and reformed. One leaped at a Marine, its bladed arms slicing through armor like paper. The Marine didn't even have time to scream. "Keep moving," Reyes barked. The squad fought their way through the streets, but the creatures kept coming. The enhanced soldiers were nowhere to be seen, vanished into the ruins. Because they weren't fighting this battle. They were waiting. Reyes' heart pounded as the extraction zone came into view. Dropships descending fast, weapons primed. "Get us out of here," he shouted into the comm. The first of his team reached the ships, covering each other as they boarded. Reyes was the last to jump in, turning just in time to see one of the creatures leap for him. It was too fast. But before it could reach him, a blur of motion. A hand, enhanced and powerful, grabbed the creature midair and slammed it into the ground. The enhanced soldier, the leader, stood there, his red eyes locked on Reyes. "You should leave, Reyes," he said, voice calm. "We'll handle this." For a split second, Reyes saw something in his expression. Excitement, because this wasn't just a battle for him. This was the true war. The dropship engines roared. Reyes hesitated for half a second, then turned and jumped in. The doors sealed shut. As the ship lifted off, Reyes looked down at the ruined city. The enhanced soldiers weren't running. They were charging straight into the horde. And they were smiling. The last thing Reyes saw before the ship hit orbit, the sky burning as the battle truly began. Admiral Drake watched as the ships entered orbit, leaving behind a war that wasn't theirs to fight. Captain Holt turned to him. "Sir, what do we do?" Drake's gaze stayed on the planet below. A battlefield of monsters, some human, some not. He exhaled slowly. "We leave." "But sir," Drake cut her off. "We came for the Dominion. They're already gone." His eyes darkened. "This isn't our war anymore." Silence fell over the bridge. But deep down, everyone knew. It would be.